Hello, everybody, and welcome back to FinalBossTV, episode number 81 of your Endgame rating show. I am your host. My name is Adam K, aka Bay, and I was gone for a week. And then, of course, silly me thinking I can go out of town for a while. I come back with strep throat, so I'm sick for the next week. So I had to cancel that show. But we were back today, and next week, and the week after that, as far as I know, unless something else explodes and blows up. I'm sorry for the delay. Today we're talking about Protection Warriors and some other general-ish tanky stuff. This is the last tank episode we have before we do like the wrap-up episodes coming up for Tier 18. But without further ado, who is here guest co-hosted with me today? But none other than this guy, this handsome gentleman.
It is I. Hello everyone, my name is Brutall. It is a pleasure to be back on Final Boss with my buddy Adam, aka Bay. We got a couple of great guests for you today. I am super excited. What?
I think, didn't you move your camera, Ryan? Where's your, what happened?
I typically look at the camera whenever we do the show.
I know, yeah. Did you?
What?
I think you need to move to your right, Ryan, or your left.
Oh,
Camera right.
Oh, hello everyone.
That's better, much better. Thank you. Good.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, much better.
Pleasure to be back on the show. Of course, I'm joking. Hey guys, my name is Brutall. We have an excellent show in store for you today. I have a lot of things in mind, a lot of things that need to be said, but more importantly, some things that shouldn't be said, so I'll go ahead and shut it now, and we'll move on. There you go.
Well done, well done. Joining us today, coming back for the Mr. Pandaria episode, and flip-flopping on his entire way of playing Protection Warrior, there's Eddy. Hello, sir.
Hello there.
You ready? You good to go?
I'm ready. I'm hyped. Good to go.
Welcome. Good, sir. Good to have you back. It's been like about a year, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was episode 38 last one. It's good to be back. Thank you very much for having me back.
Absolutely, sir. Welcome back. And joining us today, now the Prot Warrior with probably the most top 1, 2, or 3 DPS rankings on like everything right now. There's E-Man. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hello. It's good to be here. I got beat out this week, but we'll hopefully go back and get good parses.
Who beat you? Someone knocked you out of some rankings?
Yeah, I haven't been playing my Prot Warrior the past week, so
I wonder.
I'm a little behind, but we'll get there.
Yeah, man. We'll definitely talk about that, and of course, and all that during the show. But all right, let's jump out of this, and I'll let Ryan take the reins for the intros here. Ryan, take it away. Do something.
Oh goodness. So we are back, ladies and gentlemen. As your co-host today, I am excited to inform you that today is episode 81. We, of course, are talking to two of the best Prot Warriors in the world. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit the ground running here. We've already introduced our guests. We know what's going on. We know the topic. So there's some... You want me to go ahead and Bay? I've never really done this officially before. I've kind of, faked it till I maked it. Do you want me to go over what we're going to talk about in the show today? Or do you kind of just want me to jump into a topic?
You can jump into the intro stuff. I'll have to keep it a little bit mysterious. What we're gonna talk about today. So
little loose.
Yeah.
Okay. So, why don't we talk about what's been on our plates these past 2 weeks since your show hasn't been around, and really it's been a while since we've had Prot Warriors on the show at all. So, I know for me personally, I'll go ahead and I'll be selfish for a moment. I'll talk about me.
Sure.
Actually, joking aside, for those who don't know, I was. And I do emphasize the word was, GM of a guild for many, many years. 10 to be exact. But I actually retired static from the raiding scene this week, and it's been a very emotionally traumatizing period of my life. There have been many nights of crying myself to sleep, and many friends who swore they will kill me if they ever see me in real life. And, static has retired from the raiding scene. Sadly, we lost 66% of our leadership structure in static due to work and real life, and one rogue completely just vanishing. He lives up in Canada, probably got snowed in and then trampled by mooses. I really don't know.
True.
The point is, he is no longer raiding as well. So as much as it sucks to no longer be raiding under the static banner, so to speak, I I was accepted into Huge Japan as a trial on my hunter. Knock on wood, it goes well. I just transferred last night, so big things in store for me personally, tier 18. And as Bay said a few minutes ago, I have grown out my beard a little bit. It will continue to grow until BlizzCon. So if any of you guys are going to BlizzCon, I will see you there, and you can touch the beard as long as you're within 3 feet of it, because it will be. You can literally reach out 3 feet from me and still be able to touch it. Don't worry.
Is there an admission fee to touch the beard?
You know, I was actually thinking about charging an admission fee to enter the beard, but then I was worried about people getting lost in it, and then that could lead to lawsuits, and it's a process that I really don't want to deal with. So, yeah, there you go.
I don't know about that.
So now you guys know about me, and you've caught up on me. Let's go ahead. Let's pass the reins on over to the most beautiful protection warrior in all the land. E-Man, old Edward over there. Take it away, sir. What have you been up to this past week or two, and what's going on with your World of Warcraft life, your real life? What do you want to share with the crowd? Because everyone's listening. Just kidding. They're actually just looking at you. They probably won't hear a word you say. You're beautiful. Go.
Myself.
Yes.
Well, in the past week, we've been busy with PTR progress and just testing out the new bosses and how the new mechanics feel. Recently, I switched guilds from Echoes to Ascendance about, I think, 2 months ago now. That's pretty much it. Just getting really into the new guild and enjoying it immensely. And, yeah, loving the new content that's coming out.
Did you dabbled in the mythic stuff, I'm assuming? How are the mythic encounters working
I do
so far?
Dabble in the mythic, yeah. It pretty well, actually. They look pretty good compared to the heroics, yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's
some
good
interesting
to hear.
mechanics and additions, yeah.
Indeed, indeed.
Alrighty, we'll throw it over to you, E-Man. The first time on the show now, so I don't know if you don't need to talk like 7 minutes like Ryan does, but if you have anything to to update us on and let people know more about who the heck you are, sir, and why you do so much damage, I guess, as a Prot Warrior. So go for it.
No, yeah. I like Eddie. I'm basically just doing PTR stuff right now. So the mythic bosses look really good. I'm actually kind of surprised with how quickly it's progressing. So a lot of work on that stuff. And then other than that, I just finished up college. Well, didn't finish up the semester.
Oh,
so
good,
just
good.
Just kind of hanging out now for the summer. So.
I real quick, I do need to issue an official apology. For some reason, I did call Eddy E-Man. I was in the wrong.
Oh, well.
My fault. I am sorry.
I can see how the mistake was made, don't worry.
It will not happen again. So, just to clear
I
it up.
It's I'll take
We've
the
got
blame
Eddie
on that. Yeah,
and E-Man.
Right.
Two separate people, right?
Yes.
Two different people. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Absolutely. I want to open us up then. We'll go over like how protection warriors have been so far from mists to warlords. So I don't really know. I did some digging, of course, looking at how the ability prune hit the sword and board tank. But I mean, outside of like, I guess, Demo and Skull Banner and Rallying Cry, nothing really major happened to protection. E-Man, like what was any big transitional period between mists to warlords that hit the class, or was that about it?
I mean, yeah, the biggest thing is Vengeance, right? We were one of the best tanks for Vengeance in Siege of Orgrimmar. But other than that, we lost a little flavor with the banners and a little bit with Rallying Cry. But like basically the spec's identical to how it played before.
Yeah. Nothing major, Eddie, to add to that?
Nothing major. I think the balance shifted in the playstyle of Prot Warrior. If you're playing with survivability, Shield Barrier has a lot less value now. Back in Siege of Orgrimmar, you'd get to the point where you'd reach Vengeance levels on something like Thok, where you could just spam Barrier constantly, and going back even further, Shexir, where Barrier would never drop off on the ad phase. Now Barrier is sort of your filler, what you'll do when you have excess rage and don't want a DPS and use it on Heroic Strike. You just dump it into Barrier, and that's your sort of mitigation and adding to the amount of damage reduction that you get. So that has changed. I do miss Rallying Cry a bit. It's nice to have a raid cooldown from a personal perspective. It's another cooldown that I could use as a tank, but it's not a major thing.
Right. Yeah, when they did a lot of that switching to like put raid cooldowns on the DPS, which everyone originally said like why? So because like DPS warrior has Rallying Cry now, right? But I don't know why like the tanks and healers should have raid cooldowns and DPS should worry about DPS, but they're putting that again now too. We're losing Fox and Amp Magic in 6-2.
Oh, that hurts.
Hurts, but Did we see it coming, though?
Listen, man, all I'm saying is now I'm that much less valuable to a raid. I fear for my raid spot. I truly do.
Oh, yeah. On your hunter, you mean?
Well, yeah, let's not forget, for those who don't know, I've been manning, we'll say tanks for the past 10 years that I've been GMing in Static. And I played a Protection Warrior for about 9 of those 10 years. And I did play a BM Monk for a bit in Siege of Orgrimmar and Tier 14, actually. And then I actually played a bit of BM Monk for the end of Tier 17 as well. So, even though I'm just the guest co-host, I do still know a bit about Protection Warriors. So you may hear me chime in from time to time.
Just a little bit, though.
Just enough.
Yeah.
Just enough. Most of the time.
So with that, though, I guess how has Warlords been so far, like Highmaul and BRF for the tanking perspective, Eddie? I know because you went from Echoes to Ascendance now, so you've had like a different perspectives on because you have 2 different guilds going for all this stuff. But like, how is positive, negatives, good, bad, ugly? Mostly?
I would have said, to be honest, Prot Warrior hasn't been in the best state, and I think pretty much everyone will agree on that. It hasn't been in the best state for tanking so far. I think in terms of Echoes, we'd have probably got a better rank had I been playing Brewmaster on the earlier bosses, which are susceptible to cheese tactics, like Brewmaster using Guard and Dampen Harm on Gruul. That would have made that a little bit easier. So Prot Warrior hasn't been in the best situation, but it is doable, and you can get decent ranks with it, as methods show. But yeah, it's not been the best by any means. Possibly one of the worst tanks. Probably the worst.
Right. Well, I mean, we had the method interview when they got world first, and it was always funny. I would love to have seen not a wipe counter, but a res SCO counter. Because Scott plays Prot Warrior, and it's like all he plays is Prot Warrior. So he plays it well, but I almost wonder if they had to like change their way of playing because of it.
Yeah, I know. For me, when I was still on my Prot Warrior and Mythic BRF, it seemed like every 30 to 60 seconds I was calling for a cooldown. I needed a cooldown to survive something.
Right.
Whereas when I switched to my BM Monk, I literally never called for cooldowns, save from very, very, very random periods of time to where I screwed up an ability versus I needed it because my class as a BM Monk couldn't handle it. So it was more of a player issue than a class issue when it came to that. So. Speaking of, going back to the whole SCO thing, it does make me wonder, like, how do they get around stuff like that? Or how do they not rely upon it so much? I don't know. I'm not that good. I don't know. It's an interesting topic.
Well, how I think everyone else sort of got around some of the inconsistencies in balance and how BRF shaped out, and I'll throw this one over to E-Man. They gave us 5 more eye levels!
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think I completely agree with Eddie that, at least at the start of the expansion, right, especially Highmaul, we were by far the worst tank. We got brought to Imperator and Korog just because we had some mobility that was really useful on those fights. But if you look at BRF, I think a lot of our viability comes from the 5 eye level boost, having the additional stamina from that, giving us a little more leeway to play with bosses that otherwise we wouldn't have the ability to cheese that the way Brewmasters do.
Yeah, it's. And you bring up this Brewmaster's cheese. I'll put this in quotes. Why is it? Because I know all 3 of you have one, and our Prot Warrior has a Brewmaster Monk for all this tier. What is it that makes that class so much better on progress than other tanks? I'll go with Eddie's opinion first on this one. Like, why is it a thing?
I think they don't have a wide spread of cooldowns available, but the ones they have are incredibly strong. I think the most telling ones, as just a benchmark, are Gruul and Orgorger. You can go into those on a monk and pretty much never have to call for an external cooldown. On Warrior, you find yourself literally every single one having to call for an external to stop the raid from dying from that spit he does or the slash. And the thing with Brewmaster is, for big hits, it's insanely powerful. For example, Black Hand, you can have a guard that will last for the entire of Phase 1. On Orgorger, you can dampen harm 3 of those spits that he does. And if that fails, you then have Zen Meditation to cheese that and take no damage from the hit. It's a very versatile class.
Right.
And that makes it incredibly strong on progress.
I mean, of course, chat brings up guard.
I mean, so... Well, I was about to say, I think the BM Monk's versatility really stems from the fact that has guard. Is really what it boils down to. The versatility. I mean, you could literally like bind guard to almost every key in your keyboard, and you'll still come out on top. Like it's unbelievably powerful. And I believe we were talking about this yesterday, Eddie, or us collectively, I should say, that as of yesterday, they hadn't really spoken about, looking at guard, tuning guard, or anything like that for 6.2 and Hellfire Citadel. So I'm really curious to see what they do in the future with it. But maybe we'll get to that later.
We did have before the show, I believe, Eddie, you brought up and found that there was a confirmation that there's going to be a tuning pass before, of course, 6.2 goes live. I hope it's just more than just DPS, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
No, I think it was an overall tuning pass that Watcher posted.
Right. From your perspective, E-Man, like, what is it from... Did you preemptively go Brewmaster Monk? Or do you just, like, get to those points where you get a couple bosses in on your Prot Warrior and you're like, damn it, back to the Monk? Like, how does it... Like, what's the shift in, like, the tanking mentality in a guild where you're just like, back to the Monk we go, and Siege of Orgrimmar all over again?
I mean, for my guild, we completed Black End with me tanking on my warrior, but we had a Windwalker monk go Brewmaster, and we 3-tanked the fight.
Oh, you did the 3-tank, okay.
Yeah, we did a 3-tank strat so that the Brewmaster could tank the Siege Maker, right? And that's just something, the warriors can do it now, not very well, and not on the same level that monks can. But yeah, that's how we did it, and now I'm just using it for farm to gear it up for 6.2 and coming forward.
Right.
But I think part of the problem is also, like, I think guard's the biggest issue, but you can also blame a little bit on shuffle working on everything, right? Shield block doesn't work on every mechanic in Blackrock Foundry.
You're not trying hard enough, man. You're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. Shield block just like flat out doesn't work on Acid Torrent and a bunch of other mechanics, but shuffle works on everything.
On everything.
And that's obviously being changed in 6.2. So
right.
Doing a fight like
part of the problem.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but doing a fight like Orgorger on a Protection Warrior and then a BM Monk, it's two completely different things. Like, because as we keep saying, you can guard more than one Acid Torrent. Like, your guard will be worth more than a single Acid Torrent's worth of damage. Whereas on a Prot Warrior, you'll probably pop, a Demo Shout, and then maybe you'll get Vigilance from the Fury Warrior or something like that. And of course, you want to make sure your shield barrier's up. And it's just like, it's insane how much differently, of course, classes play differently, but how much more brittle a Protection Warrior is compared to just a guard on a BM Monk. It's crazy.
Right. I always kind of bring this up as sort of like a devil's advocate sort of side of things that, we'll get into this in the weeks to come when we finally talk about the absorb meta for the healing side of things, when we talk about Disc and Holy Priest, which Chatroom knows is coming. But I almost wonder if absorbs being just flat out like 100% of the damage incoming gets absorbed should be more like absorbs buffer incoming damage. So I wonder if they could tune absorbing stuff that you don't have 1.3 million guard going for the next attack. It just happens over the next couple. It like displaces, some of it can be chunked away. I don't know if they need to look at the absorb meta because it affects not only the tanking hierarchy, but also the healing hierarchy. So I'm not sure. I mean, anyone you have like an opinion on that side?
I think it would be good. I think it would certainly make the tanks a bit more balanced. If, for example, Death Knight could only expend, say 20% of their maximum health as an absorb per melee swing, that would certainly make things possibly easier to balance.
Right.
So absorbs get diminished over time and can only absorb a certain amount per melee hit, but then override until and overflow until the next melee swing. That would make things quite nice and pretty easy to tune based on the tank classes, because you can then assume that at most they will have a 20% absorb for whatever ability. That might work quite well, actually.
Right. Because I'm more thinking on the fact of it's like the blocking style of both the shield tanks. That's sort of how it works. You can only block X amount of incoming damage. You can never block all of it. But with Blood Death Knight and Brewmaster Monk, and now soon to possibly even be Guardian Druid, they can like absorb like full incoming damage and take 0.
I think it will reach a point where they realize they have to change it, because it will just be Battle of the Absorbs, and Prot Warrior by its design in its current iteration will lose out on that, because barrier, I think the biggest barrier that I've got this tier is probably about 280k. That's with trinkets popped on the pull with everything going, armor pot, everything.
Right.
Monk, Guard, you can do 1.1 million quite easily on a pull.
Yep.
I think not only should not necessarily should, but absorbs. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting way to look at things. But I think the simpler solution would just be to give guard to every tank. that would probably solve a lot of the problems right there.
Ryan, why you do this to me?
You invited me here, for the record.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. So I kind of moved us forward to the tank hierarchy balance power list real quick, and then I'll jump back more to resolve. But like, E-Man, where do you think the echelon of tanks go right now, and how do you think it's going to change going into 6.2? Like, if you could place them all like in power spikes, top 1 to 5, what do you think?
I mean, Brewmaster obviously is top right now in terms of survivability. I think DKs are probably right behind them. Guardian, Warrior, to me, are equal. I think some people rate, one or the other the higher. And then I think Prot Paladin is the worst by far currently, and will stay that way in Tier 18 because there's no changes for them. So as far as like how it changes, I think, Tier 18 mobility is going to be really useful from the PTR that I've seen. So I think Warriors are going to be good. I think Monks are going to be good for the same reasons, even with the nerfs. I think survivability-wise, DKs might be the strongest just because there's a ton of magic damage.
Yeah, exactly.
And Guardian Druids are just kind of in the middle. So I put like all those 4 classes together, but then there's a big drop-off for me right now to Prot Paladin.
Yeah. Which is weird, though, too, because Prot Paladin was really good, Highmaul and BRF, but because of how the game is shifting and the buffs to Guardian Druid, they're basically swapping places. Which, I think it's healthy for Guardian, because we just did the Guardian Druid show not too long ago, and they're, like, in a bad spot. They're like, They can do, but they're not, like, really good at it. But they got some pretty good love coming in 6.2.
Yeah,
Would you...
I know...
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say, I know that this isn't a Protection Paladin week, but, I mean, Statics, I was one of Statics MTs, and we have another gentleman named Shoulders who played a Prot Paladin. And all throughout Mr. Pandaria, I mean, Prot Paladins were my jam. Right. They were strong, man. They were an incredible tank to have, and for a variety of reasons. And then Tier 17 came out, and they were pretty good in Highmaul, and they were okay in Blackrock Furnace. And then I believe they got hit with, like, a healing nerf or a threat nerf or something like that. And then something else happened that Shoulders complained about.
We had a damage nerf, too.
Yeah, yes. So not only did we see some nerfage done to the Prot Paladins, which, kind of placed them a little bit further down the rungs as well, but I could see Shoulders starting to lose interest in his class because of the changes they made, because for so long he had been, the idol of everyone in Static for how strong he was and how much survivability he had in his class and whatnot.
Right.
And then he kind of just, well, not he, but the class lost a little bit of that, and it wasn't as much fun for him. Then there's BM Monks who use guard. So
yeah.
A little different there.
We got to keep up our guard quota. Every 3 minutes we got to say the word guard for chat room. Yeah, new drinking game. But so I guess that makes sense to me. Eddie, any changes to the tank hierarchy, or do you kind of agree with E-Man on that?
No, I'd have said for the most part I'd agree completely. The only part I'd possibly say is for certain fights, Guardian Druid can be quite nice due to the fact of it having 2 shield walls, having shield walls on charge.
Right.
So for stuff like Gruul, and actually 3 if you talent Bristling Fur, although you do lose Pulverize then, but it's a situational one, I'd say.
Sure.
But definitely Monk at the top, then DK, then Warrior, Guardian, probably equal, depends on the fight.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that on the Guardian Druid show, that Bristling Fur is, like, so situational and so poo, but it's getting a pretty big buff in the 6.2.
Yeah.
So is, like, Elude is getting a buff too, the dodge talent as well. It's like they're getting looked at finally, they're getting there. But it's weird when they look at and put a lot of focus on one of the tank classes, another one suffers. It's so, I guess it just kind of happens with, like, dev imperfect imbalance, I suppose, but we'll have to see. So you mentioned, of course, I'll go back to the Vengeance topic. Vengeance died, going from Mists into Warlords now. Hello, Resolve. So, is that your reason why you stopped DPS whoring, Eddie? Because you can't anymore? Is that why?
No, I would say I stopped DPS whoring because it was productive for a raid to DPS whore. Certain tactics benefited very well from the tank doing, like, 200% of the damage of a DPS. It made some mechanics more easy. I've gone to sort of a more classical tank standpoint now, with survivability is everything, and if you can reduce the damage taken, or more specifically the burst damage that you take, then that's the way to go. And I'll admit part of my incentive was the World of Logs tank rankings, which I thought quite fun to experiment with. But yeah.
Right. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is E-Man totally does not believe in that mentality, and you do all the damages now. And why is that what you're challenged playing Prot Warrior right now? Is that what you go for, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's mostly a 6.1 thing, just because there's not a lot of fights that are going to kill you. Like, there's very specific windows where you can die, and you're just going to cool down through that,
right,
for the most part for me. So I think while I agree, like, reducing bursty damage is potentially good for survivability, I find that I survive without having to reduce burst damage, so I might as well go for some damage, or as much damage as possible.
Chat room brings up that it's more fun to beat DPS without vengeance now because it shows how cool you are. It's an interesting way to balance it, because I thought they were going into Warlords saying that tanks would do like 70%-ish of DPS. And yeah, they had to nerf Prot Paladin with Inquisition because they were doing like more than half of the DPS in the game. Very specific fights, but yeah, it's interesting. So Resolve, though, like, what does Resolve help with? Just shield barrier?
I mean, there's guard.
There's guard. Unfortunately, it seems to be mostly shield barrier, and that's pretty
Right.
much it for Prot Warriors, as it's percentage based for all the other things that
Yeah,
Prot
like
Warrior has.
if you take Enraged Regen, it's percentage based, so no help there, right? If
Pretty much,
you
yeah.
actually get a victory rush or take impending victory, percentage based, so no help there.
Mm-hmm.
And Blood Craze is a percentage based passive as well, so no percentage there.
Who the heck takes blood craze? What? What do you? What? Let's move on.
It's just, it's all percentage based stuff, so you don't even get
Yeah.
any benefit from your Resolve. I
Yeah.
don't. It's so weird to me because Blood Death Knight double dips, more or less, and Prot Warrior gets one spell.
It's not the most balanced. I mean,
No, not of course.
for stuff like Gorger again, you can cheese Vengeance or Resolve a little bit by taking one melee swing and then getting a big shield barrier off. Big being the difference between 100k and 250k.
Right.
But that's pretty much all Resolve does for us at the moment, and I think that probably needs to change, and will change with the tier 18 set bonuses, with barrier being more usage due to increasing its value. But at the moment, it's pretty dire.
Now, Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong, but for those who don't know, the tier 18 Prot Warrior bonus is 2-piece, cuts your last stand cooldown in half, correct?
Yep.
And then
down to
4-piece,
1.5 minutes.
Yes, from 3 to 1.5 minutes. Thank you. And then 4-piece provides, is it 200% more to shield barrier? 200% more damage absorption, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
200% more.
Now this may be getting off topic, so Bay, feel free to stop me. We can talk about it later. But
Right.
correct
Well,
me if I'm
you're
wrong.
jumping to tier 18 stuff, which is fine. We can do that.
Perfect. I meant to do this.
Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't played a Prot Warrior in like 2 months now, but there is a talent in the Prot Warriors that reduces the cooldown of various defensive abilities. But does it affect Last Stand as well? Or is it not affecting Last Stand, the more rage you use while you have that talent?
You're talking about anger management.
Yes.
Yes, it does affect Last Stand.
So, interesting. I'm very interested to see how that affects tier 18 Prot Warrior cooldown usage.
Like a 1-ish minute cooldown on Last Stand.
Exactly. Yeah. So not only would you theoretically have Last Stand on a 1-ish minute cooldown, but during the duration of Last Stand, which is 12 seconds, 15 seconds? Am I off? How off am I there?
I have to look.
Yeah, I think it's 12 seconds. I believe it's 12
So
seconds.
within that window, you're absorbing substantially more.
15,
Not
I'm saying. 15.
Oh, okay.
15
During that
We're on.
15-second window, we're absorbing quite a bit more damage than we typically would with our shield barrier as well. So going back to the Resolve thing, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all ties together and how it all comes together. And then my next question would be, how do you guys currently track Resolve? Are there any add-ons that you currently use, weak auras, anything like that? Why do you use those? And is it really even necessary? E-Man, I'll start with you. Go.
Yes, I think it's worthwhile to track. I think you get a feel for it over time. I started out with just a weak aura that tells me the percentage it goes up to, I believe, 200% resolve. That you can get maybe a little higher than that. And so I just have a weak aura in the middle of my screen that tracks it. But at the same time, I think you get kind of a feel for how big the last hit was and generally where your resolve is going to be at.
Okay. So it's like, is there a... Yeah, actually, the weak aura might actually be on the website that I'm going to plug later today. I think it might actually be on Sloopbag's website for the resolve tracker. Pretty sure it probably is here somewhere, which just gives you an actual flat amount of resolve you have, I think, based on your HP. So you get like a percentage base, because it'll only go up to 100% resolve based on your HP anyway. Can you even get 100% resolve? Is that even possible?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've definitely seen it.
Okay.
And the only other thing I'd mention is I don't personally use it, but I know there are add-ons and weak auras that can do like a resolve to shield barrier strength calculation for you. So a lot of people find that useful to kind of know, this resolve means this sized shield barrier.
Right. Because the way that resolve tracks in its window of refreshing, you could actually literally like miss that bigger window and lose like thousands and thousands and thousands of effective shield barrier. So I guess having a way to watch when you have that and put it up beforehand would be beneficial.
Well, I think that actually leads into another really good question. I mean, when it comes to resolve and using something like barrier, since we don't have guard, like going into let's backtrack a bit to progression. February, March of 2015. The mythic BRF is still fresh in everyone's minds. We're pushing through. When you guys were main tanking and dealing with fights like Gruul, with fights like Chromog and whatnot, like, did you guys find you had the appropriate amount of resolve or an abundance of resolve to take those big hits from these NPCs, these bosses, or did you kind of have to finagle your way through it? Did you take the hit? Did you take more damage than you were expecting to, or did you anticipate it with this big hit, and then you use that resolve to survive the next medium level hits? I mean, what kind of approach did you guys take? Eddie, we'll start with you this time.
For me, given how much resolve actually affects Prot Warrior, I honestly just played exactly how I played for the majority of how I've played Prot Warrior for over the years. The big one for burst will be Chromog for me, on how much that bursts you when he's enraged, and even though he'll do a big hit on you, it doesn't seem to affect how much damage you'll be able to absorb with the next hit, even if you get a big shield barrier, because at that point it's going to be the difference between getting a sort of 150k 60 raid shield barrier and a 220k 60 raid shield barrier, and honestly that's not a lot when he's hitting for 300k ish.
Right, and not only that, but I mean, comparing that to, let's say, guard, it's still pretty pitiful. So let's keep that in too.
Yeah. So on the whole, I'd have said resolve doesn't really affect us that much. If we take big hits, we take big hits. The key is just having shield block up for when it happens, and shield barrier to pad.
Now, the counter argument to all like the guard hating right now is that obviously you can only do one guard every 30 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas you can technically put a shield barrier right up next to another shield barrier, correct?
Yes.
As
long as you have the rage.
If you have the rage. But like that's if you don't use anything else. That's if you're not working on blocking the melee attacks that obviously are coming too. And that's the major problem, I think, in balancing out the absorbs on these classes. And of course the DK absorb is like all the damn time. And then the same thing with the Guardian Druid absorb, it's all the damn time. Like you don't have to actually wait for it. Just it's interesting.
I would have said for Prot Warrior, you need to be planning ahead more than for the other tanks, I would have said. Because you can find yourself in a situation where you're taking a lot of damage and you panic and you think, okay, I need to press guard to survive this next hit. You then find that in 3 or 4 seconds time you don't have enough rage to shield block, and that will be the one that kills you. So in some situations it's counterintuitive, but it's best just to eat the hit and not barrier, and then have your block up for the next hit.
It's weird. I think again it all goes back to that weird absorb meta with the tanks. I think it's really awkward, and I can imagine it's a little frustrating. I mean, it's not super frustrating. You just go play a Brewmaster Monk then, or Blood DK, I guess, if that's how they want you to do it. So, and then Ryan, you were bringing us back to progression, so Blackrock Foundry and whatnot. So E-Man, during progression-wise, because now your mentality might have shifted now on farm, were there types of encounters or encounters specifically that Prot was really good on, that Prot Warriors were beneficial on during Blackrock Foundry. We obviously bring up that they're good on Cho'gal, and that's about it for Heimal, really. Korra, I guess you can argue. But what else do you think? How did BRF work out encounter-wise for Prot Warrior?
Yeah. I don't think we were the strongest tank on any fight, honestly. I think there were, like, Brewmaster is just better on every fight. I thought we were good on some of the ad fights. I thought we were good on Darmak, but that's not really a big issue for progression. I thought we were good on Thogar, also to some extent. We were good for if you did a 3-tank strat on Blast Furnace and you were tanking the security guards in the middle. We were probably the best tank for doing that strategy with a protection warrior. But other tanks could still do that. And then Blackhand, I don't think we were probably one of the worst tanks for Blackhand. I think most of the other tanks were ahead of us actually for that progression.
Right. Oh, go ahead, Ryan. You guys?
I was going to say, I mean, a couple things spring to mind when
Sure.
you talk about Warriors and BRF, and I would love the input of our two guests, of course, but I think back to my progression on my Warrior, and a fight like Hans and Franz comes to mind, and by no means would I sit here and say that Protection Warriors tanked them better, but any tank who's tanked Hans and Franz, I'm pretty sure on any difficulty, they know the frustration of being picked up for the suplex and being thrown into a stamper. And then, of course, you have Heroic Leap to get out of that, whereas, you know, Protection Paladin, the DK, Druid, or whatever, they may not be able to get out as easily. But that's really the only benefit of playing a Warrior on most of these fights is, you know, you have the movement ability, and you have the fact that Priests can life grip you. And that's really what it boils down to, is the fact that Warriors really are pretty much the best when it comes to mobility and movement and whatnot. But they don't have guard, so they really just... You suffer in that aspect.
You're gonna kill viewers today, Ryan. We're gonna
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Yeah, it's because we got about 7 or 8 bosses in. I would say 6 or 7 actually, before our Prot Warrior went Brewmaster Monk. Because it just felt like there was no reason anymore. Because all the fights were you didn't need the movement, and you needed the actual just damage resistance and the cooldown. So.
Absolutely. I know for me, I switched from my Warrior to my BM Monk once we went 8 out of 10, and I killed my Monk, or I didn't kill my Monk. I killed the last 2 bosses on my Monk, so I completely agree. I could not imagine having a Warrior Paladin combo for Blackhand. It just it wasn't going to work. You can do it, I'm sure, but I don't want to be clear.
Right.
So
well, I mean,
it made sense.
E-Man over here 3-tanked that fight. Freaking weeks and weeks ago with less gear. Like, my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, our comp would have been Prot Paladin, Prot Warrior, which doesn't work on the fight if you don't add a 3rd tank that is taking the siege or something else. So.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Eddie, did you 3-tank?
We managed. I think we got in Echoes the first in the world to do it with Warrior DK. And that was with the DK tanking the siege engines and me tanking the boss.
Not only are you beautiful, you're clearly a better player than me. I'm just saying.
No, it was very painful. It wasn't fun.
It wasn't fun? Ugh.
No.
That's crazy, man. Props to you guys. Props to you and your guild, because I noped out of there.
No, I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
I think, yeah.
All this
there are
discussion,
better options.
Oh, I was gonna say, all this discussion we're having too. This is after Shield Barrier was buffed recently. I have that in the notes, and it was buffed by like what 20-ish%.
It was a nice little like nod to Prot Warriors, but then it was kind of a screw you. We're still not going back to the Mr. Pandaria level of Shield Barrier.
Right.
I know we said this like 30 or 40 minutes ago when the show went live, but I mean Shield Barrier Mop and Shield Barrier Wad, 2 completely different things. Like, Barrier was so strong in Mr. Pandaria, and they nerfed the crap out of it in WoD, and it sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, it's a lot. 0 times 1.2 is still 0. Oh, man.
That comment.
Yeah, so I guess the question I had in the notes was how big of an impact was this? And obviously it was needed, but was there much of an impact at all? I guess it made it not as bad, sort of?
I mean, a buff is a buff.
Yeah?
Right? It doesn't drastically change how you play, right? You're still always going to prioritize shield block over shield barrier. but shield barrier has a little more value for when you actually need it.
Right. What about just like a off-topic sort of thing here with the damage swings of tanks right now? Because people kind of like bring that into perspective. I know like Brewmaster Monks were sort of brought on the Blood Boat during Iron Maiden's Mythic because A, they don't need a healer as much really because you can sort of backpedal the attacks, and B, you can heal yourself and do a lot of good damage. Where did like all the tanks sort of lay out in like a damage hierarchy right now in the top 5? Like is Prot Warrior like way up there in overall damage? I didn't like compare you to other damage oriented tanks in the logs, E-Man, but like where do you rank? Where do the tanks rank right now in overall damage?
I mean, it depends on what percentile you're looking at, right? If you're looking at like the top 100th percentile, Blood DKs are obviously ahead, and they're ahead by like 6k DPS. Monks, Guardians, and Warriors are all like right next to each other, and Guardians are only there because of Heart of the Wild, right? They go kitty for the majority of their DPS. So really, Monks and Warriors are comparable. But the second you drop down to like 75th or 50th percentile, if you're looking at like middle of the road parses, more realistic of progression, then Warriors are second, still behind DKs. They're running Breath of Syndragosa.
Right.
But a little bit ahead of Guardians and Monks. And then Prot Paladin is the lowest. It'll
be interesting to see how that for Blood DK changes going into 6.2 because Breath of Syndragosa is getting kind of worked a little bit. I don't know if Blizzard's super happy about the Chains of Ice spam awesome single target damage they're doing right now, so I wonder how that'll work. If that'll really be a big nerf to them or not with the runic power change to Breath. We'll have to see. That's kind of all Blood DK has right now to even do damage, though, so I don't know. I'll jump over to stat priorities now. Get a little more mathy nitty-gritty here. So your attunement for Prot Warrior is Shield Mastery. You get 5% more Mastery. Woo! And then your Mastery is Critical Block, which increases your block chance by X percentage and your chance to critically block by a higher X percentage. Now, critically blocking is just double the block amount, right? And then also you get attack power. So where do your stats lie? Like what do you want out of the 6 secondary stats, Eddie? Like what order do they fall into, you guys?
For me, number 1 priority is always going to be bonus mastery, as you get everything from that. You get attack power, you get mitigation, you get
I'm sorry. You said bonus mastery.
Bonus armor. Sorry. Did I say bonus mastery?
I don't want to confuse anyone.
I
did not want to confuse anyone.
Right.
It's okay. I said Blackrock Furnace earlier.
You did.
So don't worry. I meant Blackrock Foundry for the record. Please continue, Eddie.
Right.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Bonus armor comes first. Then I would say probably mastery. I generally quite like how it feels. It reduces the damage, the burst that we take. That's the primary reduction it is, because it increases our window that we block for. It increases the chance that we roll a block when we get a melee swing, and that just reduces our burst damage by so much. And it leaves you room to barrier more if you want to. After that, I would probably have said crit, followed by versatility. That all depends if you're gearing for survivability or not. If you're gearing for DPS, it can change quite dramatically. I know there are some pretty sick haste builds out there with anger management, and you just get crazy uptimes on bloodbath and things like 30-second bloodbaths. But yeah, for survivability, bonus armor, mastery, then crit.
I saw you nodding your head there, E-Man. Have you dabbled in said builds, or do you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, no,
that's what I run currently. Is haste, unyielding strikes, and anger management build. So if you're going for damage, bonus armor is still your best stat for damage. Put strength in there second. I know it's not a secondary, but it's always worth thinking about that strength is good value in item level upgrades. Right. Then I use haste to 12.5%, raid buffed a little bit higher just to account for latency. But essentially that gives you an extra GCD inside Bloodbath, and also helps with reducing anger management cooldowns. And then crit is basically the second stat I look for. And I guess multi-strike I would put third if I'm caring 100% about DPS, but realistically I would put mastery third because you still want some survivability in your build.
Right.
Here's a question. May I ask a question, Biff?
Yes, you may.
Sir Overlord Biff.
Okay.
So here's going now I am a self-professed decent protection warrior, but I would absolutely classify you guys as being better at me in terms of theory crafting and caring about the class, obviously. Back when Hymal first became available, Mythic Hymal first became available, I was actually allocating stats with bonus armor crit master for the additional uptime on Enrage because I wanted to dish out a little bit more damage while keeping that survivability. And then I, of course, switched to mastery within like 2 weeks. And I'm curious, did you guys experiment with anything at the beginning of the expansion, the beginning of raiding in WoD? Or has it always been, well, I'll go master, bonus armor mastery kind of a deal for you guys?
At the start of Hymal, I went for bonus armor and crit and Mark of the Thunderlord. Yeah, because I thought that would be significantly better and would provide more versatility. But it turns out they nerfed Shield Guard, Shield Barrier into the ground, and yeah, it didn't prove to be particularly good. I thought it was
not an idiot. Yes.
So then I switched to Mastery when stuff started hitting me and killing me.
Right. Like how sorry is a
Good
chat
deal.
right now. Crit is king. You'll listen to these baddies. Of course. Crit is king. Crit is king from the DPS warrior perspective. Anything you wanted to add to that, E-Man, about stats and stuff? And
No, I mean, yeah, I think crit is good. I mean, it's obviously good for enraged uptime, which is also good for generating rage to use defensively or offensively. So I think some people run too heavily into mastery, even if you're going like pure defensively. I think there's an argument to be made that going above like 45 or 50% mastery is just too much, and you might want to look at getting some crit on your gear, even if you're playing defensively. But
So,
yeah,
may I interject?
yes.
May I?
yes. Sorry.
So, you say there should be a certain threshold that protection warriors want to probably not go beyond and whatnot, hence the term threshold. So why is that? Is it because there's no reason to mitigate more damage than is possible to mitigate? I mean, what's your stance on that? What's your reasoning behind that?
I mean, there's not technically a point where mastery just like stops giving you a benefit or falls off. It just like slowly point for point is less valuable because you're already
turns start kicking. That's what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
Yeah, I also kind of wonder how that works with mastery and how block. Like, is there actually a percentage you just don't want to pass?
I would have said probably around 50% passive block.
Right.
Yeah,
Probably
that's
around
that's
that.
about what I would
Probably
say.
a little bit less.
It depends on where your crit's at also, because that's the stat you would start picking up dependent on your mastery. But there's definitely a point where it shifts around 50%.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Weapon enchant preferences? Do you both have different ones currently on your gear? So is it for survivability you go Mark of Blackrock?
Generally speaking, I'd say, yeah. The harder the boss hits, the more benefit you get from Blackrock, because if you're going below 50%, it has more uptime. If the boss is hitting for nothing and you're doing old content or just heroic content, then Mark of the Thunderlord might be better, or the one that gives mastery, which I have no idea what it's called. Yeah. For DPS, I think it's Thunderlord. I don't know.
Right.
E-Man probably knows better than I do.
Yeah, I would honestly take Mark of the Bleeding Hollow is the mastery one, which is also very good. But I would take Thunderlord or Bleeding Hollow over Blackrock, even defensively, just because the uptime difference is so big. Blackrock at best has like a 20% uptime. The strength of it, as Eddie mentioned, is it's always like when you're at low health. So there's some value to be said for having it always when you're at low health. But Thunderlord and Bleeding Hollow have 40 to 45% uptime, which is really good for a weapon enchant. And those stats aren't, far enough behind bonus armor that's a bad thing.
All right. So itemization in BRF right now, we're dealing with the Black Hand's Battle Gear. So your 2-piece bonus is that your Shield Slam is an 8% chance, yay, chances, to auto-cast Shield Block. I'm sure that's fun to not have any control over. And then your 4-piece bonus is that when Shield Block is active, you get 5% additional block value.
Yep. The 2 pieces, I mean, the 2 pieces it's whatever, right? Because you're just going to deal with the procs when they come.
Right.
It has the potential to save you rage. It has the potential to proc when you're not doing anything and be completely wasted. The 4-piece is really strong, I think, for progression on things like Chromog and Blackhand, where it hit, where bosses hit incredibly hard.
Sure.
Having 5% block value is huge, and the pieces are itemized well enough that it's definitely, at least for progression, it was worth picking up.
Now, see, I actually completely disagree about the 4-piece because I found that being a Brewmaster Monk and using Guard was more effective than having a 4-piece on my warrior. So I mean I don't want to stir up any trouble, but I completely disagree. So
that is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Guard. My goodness.
I want to hear Eddie's opinion though on
the set bonuses. Yeah, of course.
Guard
Please,
is
Eddie,
obviously
please.
a strong option, so Guard is always an option. I mean, the 2 sets, it's nice. If it works, it's brilliant, because it makes your shield block work in the same way that Prot Paladin's Shield of the Righteous does, and you can track your shield block. You can get up to sort of, if the stars align, you can have shield block up for the entire fight, but it's not very likely. The 4 set, however, is incredibly strong and works very well with our mastery, as crit block gives it 10% extra block value, so you're up to 70% of melee reduction. And I found that really useful on Blast Furnace 3, tanking that. Having 12 or so shield guards up at once, getting 70% blocks on all of them, is just, it helps a lot.
Right. Any talk about trinkets? There are only 3, I believe, you can deal with, unless you go like dabble in the DPS side of things for Blackrock Foundry. So what 2 are optimal, I guess, for survivability, Eddie? Like what 2 would you suggest?
I still value for survivability the one that drops off, that one in
Pillar of Earth, right?
Pillar of
You're
Earth,
thinking
yes.
of the one off Tectus, yeah.
Yeah, the one Tectus, that's it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the question, are you actually using high maul trinkets still?
Yes, flat stamina and bonus armor. I find it very useful because the bosses they hit hard enough to the point where if you're not using 2 stamina trinkets, you tend to take a fair bit of burst in Blackrock Foundry.
Okay.
Whereas, so I like to have 1 stamina trinket, and the other one, I mean, if it's not hitting very hard, I'll use the Blast Furnace door for a bit more DPS. If I want control over a fight, I'll use the one off Hans and Franz, because that has a really nice on use, and if you use that on the pull, you can get really big shield barriers with it, and it has massive uptime. I think it's about 3k bonus armor for 20 seconds, so it's incredibly strong.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one that's mastery stat and then bonus armor on use, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is Blast Furnace is the other way around to where it's
the other way around, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Okay, making sure.
Blast Furnace is just a proc. Having the on use I find is really useful. It let me be able to soak smashes on Black Hand without using Shield Wall and just having Clarity Will spammed in me.
And that is something incredibly important for tanks who aren't capable of casting Guard, is having more utility, more CDs to use on demand. So
it works very well with Guard as well, actually.
It doesn't? Oh, you don't
does,
say!
yes.
Whoa, we don't need to be stacking things with Guard, all right? I'm just saying. Let's back that train up.
Oh, man. Ugh. So going from tier 17 and to tier 18, Brutall jumped ahead of this a little bit, but your tier 18, that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry.
You're fired. Your tier 18 set is called the Battle Gear of Ion Wrath, and your 2-piece reduces the cooldown of Last Stand by 50%, making it a 1.5 minute cooldown, or 90-second cooldown if you want to go for that way. And then your 4-piece is your shield barrier's effect is increased by, or shield barriers by 200% when used during Last Stand. I should almost like it should have flavor text there. Almost as good as Guard.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions, all right?
Right. But that's pretty significant. We went over this a little bit earlier with the fact that you can couple anger management with this and having like a 1-ish minute Last Stand, and then that makes that Last Stand's technically only a 45-second cooldown because 15-second uptime. Pretty good bonuses. Eddie, what do you think?
I would say the bonuses are... At first I thought they were a little weird, but having played with them, I feel they're quite nice. I wouldn't have chosen Last Stand to buff that as a set bonus if I was designing the armor, but actually playing it on PTR wasn't that bad. I mean, on Archimond, on testing on Mythic, I was getting around 480k shield barriers. which isn't that bad, and I was finding them not able to drop off in the 6-second window that they're up.
Right.
So,
It's like half
I mean,
the size of the guard.
potentially that's pretty good, actually. So, with anger management, that might be the spec to go for utility, for progress.
I have a question for both of you, and I want to hear both your opinions on this. Eddie, you said that if you were developing the 2 and 4 piece set bonuses for Prot Warriors, you would not have selected Last Stand. I'm curious as to A, why you would not choose Last Stand, and B, what ability you would have chosen, because in my mind, I think the reason why they chose Last Stand is it's not as strong as our other as strong as other Prot Warriors cooldowns. I keep saying as if I'm still playing the class, but I mean, Last Stand's good, don't get me wrong. I mean, yay, more health, but you know, it's a longer CD. It's just giving you the HP. You know, it's not a 40% damage reduction ability like Shield Wall. So why would you have chosen something else? Is it just for the sake of the argument that Shield Wall's better, or what's your opinion?
I would have said do something with a more consistent survivability bonus. I mean, with anger management getting that cooldown down to a low number, it's quite nice, but I would have chosen something that would be a bit more reliable. So,
sure. Like Shield Wall.
Yeah. Well, possibly not. Possibly. No, I don't know, but probably not Last Stand. As I can see why they did it, because it isn't used very much, but I'd have just increased it with the tuning pass that they're doing and put the bonus elsewhere.
Gotcha.
Right.
E-Man, I want to know your opinion, my friend. Lay it on us.
I mean, I thought it was a good decision. I mean, I guess I'm in the same boat as Eddie. I see why they're doing it, right? Last Stand should be used more. It helps with magic damage, having the bigger guards, things like that. So it helps with magic damage.
What? No, I'm sorry.
The bigger. Oh, I said the bigger
You
guards.
said guard.
Yes.
Having the bigger.
It begins.
Oh man.
Having the bigger shield barriers is good for magic damage, which is, I think, something that they needed to buff. I really don't know. I don't have an idea for how else they would have done it.
I mean, it's very much a double-dipped, pigeonholed, cooldown-oriented set bonus, where...
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
It's double-dipped and pigeonholed. You have to use
carry
one.
on.
Yeah, you use one to buff the other, and all it does is that. It does nothing else. Like right now, you have the option where you have one ability leads you to blocking, which might save you actually using a shield block, which you can use a barrier instead. You have an option there. But now it's like, to get the really cool shield barrier, you have to Last Stand. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
So I guess it just gives you options. I thought originally looking at this, and sort of coupled with the Archimon trinket, which we'll talk about in a second, that it almost gives warriors the option to, like, you know, I can take one more stack of that tank debuff, or I can take one more, you know, before we have to swap out, or I'll soak one more of X, Y, and Z mechanic because I have this extra cooldown now, or more often up. But that's all I can see it doing, right? Like, it doesn't. That's all it gives you.
Yeah, I think I view it as basically you need one less external.
Right.
So you could argue it's making warriors more self-sufficient, which is the problem they had in Tier 17. But at the same time, is it harder to just call an external CD from one of your healers and use that? So.
Right. Yeah. And I brought the Tier 18 trinket. So the Archimon trinket, the one in question now, is that your shield block reduces magic damage taken by an X percentage, and your shield barrier also increases your armor by an X percentage. So either or sort of couples with the opposite effect. So shield block reduces magic damage, shield barrier increases armor, reduces physical damage. So they like cross-hatch each other's abilities, but then looking at the 4-piece, you really can gain a lot from just barriering all the time now, because you gain the extra armor, and it's stronger during Last Stand. Right?
Yeah.
I think it shifts the playstyle slightly at Prot Warrior. At the moment, you'll want to maybe be a bit more conservative with when you use your shield barriers. So you will use block as your bread and butter, and then barrier when a high damage ability is coming. This changes it to you'll want to get barrier up at all times and as much as possible. So say you've got your shield block running and you've got a 20 barrier, you'll just go straight into that 20 barrier to get the bonus armor off it and try and keep that running as well. I mean, It does have nice synergy with the bonus, as it gives you more uptime on shield barrier as well. Yeah,
I wonder how it's going to feel. Any thoughts on the trinket, E-Man?
I I think it's like, I guess we're kind of focusing on the physical armor portion.
Sure.
So one thing I'll say is it only works off of your armor and not your bonus armor.
Oh.
So right now, Prot Warriors have something like 1,000, 1,500 bonus armor, and the percentage is only of your base armor. So really, the physical armor it's worth a little more than just having a bonus armor trinket in that slot. So I think really where the strength of the trinket lies is in the magic damage reduction whenever you have shield block up. I think there's a ton of magic damage next tier, and I think you're going to be wanting to use that trinket on a lot of the magic damage heavy fights.
Right. That makes sense.
I think it'll be really useful as going way back to Old War. I think it was the 2 set or possibly the 4 set of the Warrior set had 20% magic reduction on shield block. It's basically the same thing, just a little bit stronger. And for stuff like Firefighter, that was pretty much a must-have to have for the tank, to have that on shield block. So I can see it being incredibly strong for progress, and just farming Archibald for those trinkets.
Yeah, which is also a potential problem, right? Where it's almost required for progression on, I think, some of the later tier bosses, which is, I don't think that's not necessarily a good design to like require that trinket for certain bosses.
Well, it's going to be the progression race on that sub-tangent is going to be interesting to see, because the guilds that do more heroic clears early, like the split clears that do, like, you know, Eddy's going to do 5, more power to you, sir. But if your guild only does, say, 2 or 1 only, you're only going to get so many trinkets. And if you get a lot more of them going into your mythic clear the week after, if they're doing there's rumor mill right now that they're not going to be relaunching all of Mythic in one swoop. It's going to be delayed in wings. I hope not. But we'll have to see how that works out with how powerful that Mythic, not the Mythic, but the heroic version of the Archimon trinket is going into Mythic progression. Like, not having it, or having 3, or having, like, 12, how does that affect the balance of the race? We'll have to see. That'll be interesting. Anything else you guys want to add on the 6.2 stuff coming, or the Tier 18 shenanigans before I move us along?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll be interesting to see when the balance pass comes out. We might get some spell changes, potentially, which would be quite interesting to watch out for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just kind of need to see where it goes. It's still too early to say. The only thing I'd say about the Archimon trinket, like, even if you don't get it, there's still a ton of really viable trinkets, right? There's an updated pillar that's going to be really good. There's the, like, basically healing trinket that reduces damage based on missing health. Yeah. So, I mean, there's just a ton of options with how they're gearing next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. I really wonder. And I also kind of wonder how many trinkets Archimon will drop if it's like a set 2, or like 1 if you're under the, like, maybe a 17-man threshold. Obviously the guilds will do 30-man splits. But I wonder, is that 3 trinkets? Is that 2 trinkets? Are they just randomly in the loot table so you can get none? It might be really awful.
It's gonna suck.
It might be really awful. Yeah, we'll have to see. I would assume not. I hope it's like always 1 or 2 or 3, depending on your raid size, but we'll have to see. Alrighty. I want to take a moment real quick to tell you guys about some communities and things and some websites behind the scenes that you may have heard about or may not have known about. So I will jump over here real quick and tell you about, if you want more World of Warcraft news, periodicals, interviews, or if you want probably one of the really coolest things I think that comes up on manaflask.com is, apparently not, because my region is not loaded. Hold on. Live editing, because for some reason it's not going to load during the show because my XSplit broke and crashed. There it is. Whoop! There's Manaflask. There's a little black bar on the side there. Ignore that. Apologies. But on here, where's the update? There it is. Where's Sony's raid? Yeah, the healing method corner's here. The world of raid cooldown craft. This is a good little article on Manaflask if you want to go over here and jump on that on manaflask.com. They have tons of articles. They do a lot of coverage over the raid race when we get there into Tier 18, of course. They'll have a huge raid race. They just did the big coverage for Highmall and then, of course, Blackrock Foundry. So just bookmark manaflask.com, jump over there and check them out. Of course, if you're looking for raid guides for each individual class, not all of them are out yet because they take a while to do, but summonstone.com is like the new hotness, I would say. There's a Brewmaster guide right here to find out how to hit guard so many times, right there. But every other class is coming eventually. These guides are really, really in depth And I'll jump over here to the Blood DK one, for example. Rotation, playstyle, talents, glyphs, gear, stats, stat weights, challenge modes. Lots of information found on here by really great players. You can go check out that on summonstone.com. Additionally, I talked about earlier today about weak auras and things. Slootbag has a website where he has compiled lots of weak auras. There's lots. Yeah, there they go. There's a whole lot of weak auras right here. So if you're looking for, and these are for all the tank classes, of course, there are also some general-oriented ones as well as too. But you can go check out slootbag.com for his weak aura section, and check out all these different ones if you want to add some to your UI, of course. Then if you have missed any previous episodes of Final Boss TV, they're all on our website at FinalBoss.tv, where you'll find our podcast version as well. Our store, the Ask a Boss, and the Be a Guest buttons are all right in there. The link to the stream, how to support the show goes right here. And then it links, of course, to our episode guide on our YouTube page, where you can catch all of our past episodes, side content, the interview we had with Paragon, interview we had with Method, and the On My Own Machinima parody, all the 2015 episodes, the after shows, all the kill videos from my point of view, 2014 shows, 2013 shows, the Brutall Coltrane episode from 2013. Brutall sings in this episode. You could check that out. He serenades him. It's a pretty good episode. I suggest you should go check that out. But all right, down there below, all of our links are down below the stream. And you can check that all out later. And if you want some more Final Boss TV, of course, to find out what episodes are coming up next, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And I'll let you know on the social medias. But enough about that. Talent time, boys. I'm going to bring this up real quick here. I always hope going into these segments of the show that there are choices with level 100 talents for Prot Warriors. And that might be a new choice coming into tier 18 here, but your talents for... You got something to add, Ryan? What you got? What?
Just a sneeze.
Oh, just a sneeze. Okay.
Just a sneeze.
I thought you
Move along.
Okay.
Nothing to see here.
Anger management is every 30 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldowns of several of your abilities by 1 second. So with Prot, you got Avatar, Bloodbath, Blaze Storm, everything basically, but you add Shield Wall, Demoralize, and Shout into Last Stand. You've got Ravager for Prot, is you throw down like a super D&D that things always get moved out of if you're a DPS, but if you're a tank, you can put it where you want. And for 11 seconds, you get 30% extra to parry. And Gladiator's Resolve is just a 5% increased damage reduction provided by defensive stance. Unless you're going DPS with it in Gladiator stance, but not the topic of the show. So where do the strengths in these lie, I guess, right now, and then where will they might go, Eddie? Where do you think?
Well, let's start with anger management. I honestly can't say that I've used it this tier. I think it's pretty situational. I think it's heavily geared towards DPS at the moment. Right. Currently, I don't think you'd get all that much situational use out of it, just due to how Warrior works at the moment.
Sure. So
I haven't really gone for that. I know E-Man has gone for that quite heavily on, as it's really strong DPS-wise. Mm-hmm. Ravager, towards the start of the expansion, I was using Ravager quite a lot on most fights, as it simmed out as being the best. However, when you get certain hard-hitting one-shot abilities in Blackrock Foundry, like Cruel Slashes, Blackhand Smashes, Marax Shots, and such like, I found it much better just to take Gladiator's Resolve and call for externals in the gap that I'd use Ravager.
Right.
It seemed to provide a much more stable damage intake curve. But one fight that I did use it on was 3-tanking Blast Furnace, and I was taking the 12 cards there, and Ravager was a really useful cooldown to have, and just combine that with, Shockwave and etc.
Parry, I'd imagine, pretty good.
Yeah.
And then E-Man, was Eddie right on the point? Do you usually take anger management most of the time right now? And is that mostly because of a DPS standpoint, or did it actually work out? Is the benefit of the lowering your cooldowns, like your defensive ones, actually that good with anger management?
No, you wouldn't. I mean, the only fight I've seen people take anger management on for not for DPS reasons is Orgorger to deal with Acid Torrent. It's pretty good there because you just need a cooldown for every Acid Torrent, and lowering the cooldown of Shield Wall, Demo Shout, and everything like that is pretty important on that fight. But at the same time, you could just call for externals through it. But really, yeah, the strength lies in anger management in terms of DPS, reducing bloodbath cooldown to, you can get 30-second bloodbath cooldown and 30-second dragon roar cooldown with the way it currently works. So.
Yeah, that's a pretty big change. That's what's weird about looking at these talents for Prot Warriors is that it's a 60-second cooldown where, yeah, you gain 30% parry for 11 seconds, super situational, and I guess the damage is okay. But then Gladiator's Resolve is just like, yay, 5% more defensive damage reduction. And I guess Anger Management's the only one that's really engaging, because as you spend rage, you lower the cooldowns on your abilities, but they all kind of feel like... I mean, you could literally just take Gladiator's Resolve forever and never think about your other talents if you're a Prot Warrior. Usually. Like, and that's kind of unfortunate.
I mean,
yeah.
Speaking from someone who main tanked, 10 out of 10 Mythic Blackrock Furnace, most of it being on my Warrior, I did take Gladiator's Resolve for most of my stuff because A, I'm lazy, and B, I didn't see a real benefit from either of the other two talents. I mean, I just wanted the flat mitigation. I just didn't want to think about anything else. I make a joke that I'm lazy, but I mean, I speak as someone who, raid led, and then I was, making sure that everyone was positioned properly. I managed our cooldown usage as a raid. So, I mean, on a fight like Chromog,
right.
I'm dealing with, calling out any number of random cooldowns at any point in the fight for any breaths or this or that or the other. So I took the easy, lazy option, and it really didn't make that big of a difference in my opinion.
Right.
So I wish there was more. I wish it was a little bit more dynamic for Protection Warriors. I wish there was a little bit more of a reason, and I think in 6.2 we'll see that there is a little bit more of a reason, of course. But I'm speaking strictly of 6.1 and Blackrock Furnace.
Right. Well, the thoughts going into 6.2, I guess, is just like you can just take
Blackrock Foundry. Blackrock Foundry.
I almost did it on purpose there. I almost felt that on purpose, but
okay. So real quick, I have to tell you guys why I keep saying Blackrock Furnace.
Oh right.
I raided in 2 different guilds for a while now. I've raided in Static, and I raided in another great guild called Exiled from Hell in the Afternoon. Exiled from Hell. If you guys want to raid in the Great Afternoon Guild, go apply Exiled from Hell. We have been on Mythic Blackrock Furnace for like 2 or 3 weeks now, and the fight is so ingrained in my mind, I've been calling Foundry Furnace for those 2 or 3 weeks. So I apologize. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
I'm sure many people in chat or out there in the progression world understand because of that fight's time sink. Ugh. Yeah.
So aggravating.
It's fine.
I'm sorry. I needed to get that off my chest.
It just... So Sari actually brought up that, well, we're going to get into other talent trees here in a moment, but he said that Sudden Deaths executes work with AM. The free Sudden Death proc you gain actually counts as 30 rage? No way.
Well, I think more importantly, at least for Prot Warriors, is Unyielding Strikes. Every heroic strike you cast counts as 30 rage, regardless of how much it actually costs. Because Unyielding Strikes means it's 5 less per stack, so... Every unyielding strike, heroic strike that you use is 30 rage, even though you maybe spend 5 rage on it, or it's free.
Right.
So
well, I guess we'll jump into that tier of talents then, because the level 100 seem to be kind of dull. You do have a weird... All of your talent trees, honestly, outside of like 30 and arguably a little bit of 75, are all like DPS oriented, right? So I guess it's because how you just do your DPS and how you work with it. But you're talking about unyielding strikes. Is Devastate reduces the rage cost of heroic strike by 5 for 5 seconds up to 6 times. So you can make free heroic strikes, but that still counts as 30 rage.
Yeah.
So
it counts as 30 rage every time you heroic strike.
Right.
Which is 1 second reduced on AM. That's why you see Bloodbath and Dragon's Roar being so low, right? You can Bloodbath is baseline a 1 minute CD, but if you can get it down to 30 seconds with Anger Management, which means you spent 900 rage in that 30-second window, which you're never going to generate that much rage, right? It's all the heroic strikes and unyielding strikes, which are way cheaper but count as 30 rage.
I mean, how many heroic strikes can you get off in the 5-second window of unyielding strikes before it falls off and you have to restack it again?
I mean,
do you get 5 or do you get a little bit less?
You get 3 in every window, right? But you could basically restack it. So you get 3 in the first stack of unyielding strikes, and you get 3 in the second stack. Because every time you devastate, you get a new stack of unyielding strikes.
Right.
So you just slowly build it up to 6 stacks. But like in the time it takes to reset, you get something like 18 heroic strikes in that window.
Wow.
And the rage cost is like half of what it would usually be.
But it counts as the full amount.
But yeah, it counts as the full rage amount in terms of anger management.
Interesting. Is that... I almost want to know if that's intentional.
I mean, my opinion is it isn't. It's the same, right? I think Warriors 3 was pointing out sudden death, right? That those executes count as 30 rage.
Yeah.
And anger management says rage spent, right?
Exactly.
And technically, none of that is rage spent. It's all just assumed based on what heroic strike is valued at.
Right. Because, well, sorry said it's intentional. I guess that's interesting. I don't know. Unless you know that's actually how it happens, you won't know that's how it actually happens. Because if you're hitting free heroic strikes or cheaper heroic strikes, you wouldn't think you're actually using 30 rage each like you normally would. Or if you get a sudden death proc, you wouldn't think you're getting a 30 rage spend a turn on execute because it costs nothing. But it does actually take the second off your cooldowns.
Yeah, the big thing is rage spent, right? That's what anger management says. And even though it's, obviously not rage spent.
I think it just are hard-coded into what ability you're using and how much it would cost before anything else interferes, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is unyielding strikes the better thing to take here? I mean, is heavy repercussions worth anything, or is it just kind of like not anywhere near as good?
Right, it's choices based on damage, right?
Right.
Unyielding strikes is the most damage, but you lose a lot of rage that you could use defensively for shield block or shield barrier.
Right.
So, and same thing with sudden death. You spend GCDs on execute that you wouldn't have to.
Right.
But both of those are more DPS. But then you can take heavy repercussions, which I know Eddy does. And then you don't have to, you can spend all your rage defensively on shield blocks and shield barriers and still get some DPS benefit.
Right. Because you could just shield slam after you. Well, it only says shield block or shield charge. Does it actually work with shield barrier or no?
No. It's just shield block for heavy repercussions. Yeah.
But looking at now your Archimon trinket, you might be shield blocking a lot because of the... that could work together well. If you're not going to be barrieing her as much because you get the extra magic damage resistance based on shield blocking with the Archimon trinket, it could be some things there, some play around there. So to talk about for your actual mitigation talents though, I mean you've got level 30 talents, you've got Enrage Regen, Second Wind, and Impending Victory, which do you guys supposed to take Enrage Regen? I have no idea. I'm not a warrior, but what's the mitigation choice here, Eddy?
Generally, I just take Enraged Regeneration. Its initial hit isn't that powerful. I think it's about 10%, but the heal over time is quite potent. It's more useful for flexible runs where you're having less healers in, because in 20 man you're going to be healed up a lot more, and in 30 even more so. But no, I think that's by far the strongest talent. Second Wind seems very, very shaky because you're never on Mythic. If you're playing at that sort of level of health, you're going to die on the next hit, and Leech isn't going to change that very much.
Yeah, because second Wind was changed away from this hot to Leech, and you're not going to do enough damage to heal your... Yeah, that's...
No, it would be worthless, because the hit that will kill you anyway, regardless of if you take the talent or not, whereas you might survive it with Enraged Regen. Victory Rush depends on the fight. If you're killing lots of ads, maybe, but for most fights I'd have said probably not. For 5-mans, yeah, possibly.
Challenge modes, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I took Rage Regeneration for pretty much my entire BRF run as well. In my mind, there's just not a good reason to take either of the other two.
It gives you another cooldown, so you don't have to ask.
Exactly, yeah.
You only have so many, so that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, there's no guard available, so you might as well take Rage Regeneration.
Right.
I just hop on one of the bigger things is Enraged Regeneration is usable while stunned. So on Black Hand Shattering Smash, you're stunned for 3 seconds after that, and you can use Enraged Regeneration, which you really don't see any benefit from the other two talents while you're stunned. So
yeah, that's a good point. And I guess the other talent tier that actually gives you some defensive benefit would be 75. So Mass Spell Reflect, Safeguard, and Vigilance. Usually Vigilance is taken by the DPS warriors because you can't Vigilance yourself. So do you just take Vigilance for your other tank if you're a Prot Warrior? Or are there actual bonuses for Safeguard or Mass Spell Reflect ever?
Generally speaking, well, it's very situational. I'd say
Sure.
Safeguard and Vigilance have equal usage. If you have to be split and away from the other tank, then Vigilance is the one to go for. But if you can stand next to the other tank on something like Cromog or possibly Gruul, you can Safeguard them pretty much on cooldown. They then have the 20% damage reduction up for a significant amount of time.
Right.
If you're standing within, I think it's 5 yards of the target you Safeguard, you don't actually move. Your character doesn't move, so you can play around that as well, which makes it a bit more viable.
Sure. And Mass Spell Reflect still looks like a PvP thing, because I don't think there's really ever been raid mechanics where you can actually Spell Reflect boss stuff, like, in forever.
Not
This
really.
is-
There are a couple in Tier 18 where it does become a little bit useful to have, but not
Really?
majorly. Yeah, on some of the Void Bolt AoEs, it can Spell Reflect those, but that's about it.
Well, that would be nice. That's my one thought about talking about, like, with the argument between the tank hierarchy, and then between, like, Dark Simulacrum, which is the only other spell that's sort of like this, like you take the next spell and go back to the boss. They nerfed the hell out of that for Blood DK because of abuse. But now, like, you can't really Spell Reflect almost like anything in endgame raids, like on Trash, baby. But I thought it was kind of a really cool thing that Prot Warrior had, and just never really got use out of it.
No, I mean, in Siege of Orgrimmar, it had a little bit of use on the twin chamois, where you could Spell Reflect the Frost Strike. Now you can, I think it's the Hellfire Council, where you can Spell Reflect the Void Bolt. And Warrior's actually pretty strong on that, because you get the Rude Interruptions glyph as well. So you can Rude Interruptions 1 for the flat damage increase, and then Spell Reflect the next. So it's pretty good on that.
Yeah, that's possible. That sounds kind of good. And now back to another DPS-oriented talent tree here with the 90s. E-Man, like, I mean, Avatar, Bloodbath, Bladestorm. You were talking about earlier, I guess Bloodbath is just way too good with anger management.
Yeah, Bloodbath, because all your other CDs are 1 minute from the
Right.
60 tier Dragon Roar. All your other CDs and trinkets generally line up at 1 minute procs, right? Bloodbath is the choice to go for a single target. I did take Bladestorm for Cromog Hands when that was a DPS check. It was worthwhile to take there. You could argue Bladestorm on a couple of the other ad fights, but really, I think it was only super strong on Cromag for the hand phase.
I know for me.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Pardon me.
No,
I know for me that back in Heimal, actually, I was streaming our Mythic Butcher attempts, and we were getting pretty close. And then one of my viewers is like, "Brutall, you're bad. Why aren't you using Bloodbath Dragon Roar?" Because I was using like Avatar Stormbolt or something awful like that. And I switched to it, and my DPS went up. I can't say dramatically, but it was a pretty noticeable gain, and helped us get the kill that night. So it's interesting how, people like me, like, I really didn't care that much about the DPS aspect of my Prot Warrior, because in my mind, my Prot Warrior was there to tank. But you can deal out a pretty decent amount of damage as a Prot Warrior in the right circumstances and situations, as long as you know what you're doing, like these other two guys do. So it's very interesting to hear their perspective and their opinions on things, because, again, I'm not the theory crafting type when it comes to tanking, and I'm not the individual to experiment whenever I'm worried. Again, when I was raid leading stuff, to worry about so much more. So it's a really cool discussion. I really appreciate you guys being here today and sharing this with us, because it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Avatar was also buffed recently too, but it's still not a good contender.
I think it doesn't work out as being as good as Bloodbath, certainly not with anger management.
Right.
I think potentially if you've got only very specific amounts of uptime on the boss and where trinkets align, then it might be on a par with Bloodbath, but you wouldn't take a talent just because it's on a par. You'd want to go with Bloodbath just in case for most fights.
This is the issue we had on the DPS Warrior episode, where you've got, like, Shockwave has, unless you need to stun things, its cooldown is 40 seconds, so it lines up differently. Of course, it's less than that if you're Prot, even or Fury. And Stormbolt's like a 30-second cooldown, so it only lines up every other, and it's like, it doesn't really matter, it's only single target oriented. But Bloodbath's a 1 minute cooldown, Dragon Roar's a 1 minute cooldown, Anger Management will lower both of their cooldowns evenly, and Unyielding Strikes give you so much free heroic strikes that lower all the cooldowns as well. It just seems weird when you're talking about Prot Warrior and you can, like, itemize and spec out your DPS so well. Well, in this regard.
Mm.
But you're not like speccing out your survivability because you're a tank. So I don't know why it's.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be much customization in terms of survivability. It's here are your abilities, do what you want with them. Here's a couple of DPS choices to make. The tanking ones don't seem to really exist. It's all in playstyle.
Right. And I mean, other classes have lots of swapping talents when you change between like a DPS tree or a healing tree. But I always wonder, because looking at Warrior, everything is the same. You get Siegebreaker if you're a DPS over Gladiator Resolve. That's the only change. But I don't know why when the tank tree you don't actually get like tank choices. Like Guardian Druid, which is a 4th spec now, gets all of its own, you know, gets a lot of choices for tanking.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't, I wonder why that's like
I,
that.
I hate to go back to monks again, but their tier where they get to choose dampen harm and healing elixirs and what is it, the last one, diffuse magic.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a fantastic sort of tier to have as warrior, where you have that customization for certain fights. You can tune your warrior based on it.
Yeah, because you're in a weird spot when you're playing a Prot Warrior. Is like you're choosing talents based on what gives you damage and not what gives you survivability. And then you can argue too, when it came up early in the show, that you don't even have a ton of kits stuff. You have, when you have Last Stand, you can take Enrage Regen. You have Shield Wall. You have Demo Roar.
I was about to say, let's not forget about Demo Roar.
Kind of good.
Give me that 10%, I'll be happy.
Yeah, but obviously Shield Block, Shield Barrier is part of the active mitigation side of the thing. But you only have 3-ish, 3.5 real cooldowns. And until the set bonus in the next tier, Last Stand's 3 freaking minutes. You get 2 in a fight normally. 1 sometimes, depending on when you need to use it. So that's just strange to me. Like, I don't know why when you play a tank class, you don't actually get all these different choices that give you tanking-oriented things, not just DPS.
Yeah.
Hopefully that changes in the next expansion, maybe? I don't know. Who knows? Are there any strong glyph choices or things you want to, like, tell you, no, never glyph this, or yes, always glyph that? I'll go with you first, Eddie.
I would have said, from a DPS perspective, Rude Interruption is quite good for a lot of fights. Sure. If you can interrupt an ability, it's a nice flat damage increase, which makes threat a bit easier. One glyph that I do like going with is the one that increases your thunderclap damage, which is nice. And I think the only other one I run with usually is the one that increases the amount of targets hit by Heroic Strike Cleave, because that's just nice to have on your weapon at all times.
Oh, that's actually just Cleave now, isn't it? I'm trying to find
Yeah, it's just hits another target with your Heroic Strike, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Cleave. Hits 2
targets. There isn't all that much customization you can do in terms of glyphs. It's pretty much swap out the Thunderclap one for the Rude Interruption one for most fights, I'd say.
Right. I mean, there's a couple that, like, I mean, because I know that all the DPS warriors are all about Unending Rage. Unending Rage isn't a thing for Prot.
Oh yeah, Unending Rage as well. Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enrage Speed, maybe, or too inconsistent?
I think the only fight where I found that moderately useful was Imperator, when you heroic leap out and then run away.
Okay.
That makes the movement a little bit easier, but for most parts, no, I haven't used that at all, really.
Right. What do you think, though, E-Man? Anything you want to, on glyphs, anything to steer clear from, or is Eddie hitting the nail on the head here?
I would say Enraged Speed, I use it on Chromog. It's decent when you're slowed down.
Sure.
There. I would steer clear. I see a lot of people pick up Wind and Thunder, which increases the radius of your Thunderclap. And to me, your Thunderclap radius is already huge. It's almost the size of a Healing Rain. It's like 1 or 2 radius shorter than that. So, like, if you think of a Healing Rain, that's a huge area.
Sure.
So don't pick up Wind and Thunder. Pick up Resonating Power, which Eddie mentioned, because it's just the snap threat from that is way better than having a wider radius on your Thunderclap.
Sure. Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, Eddie hit it.
Would you say there's ever a time to pick up the Wind and Thunder, such as a fight like, Mythic Imperator or, Darmak or something like that? Or is it really just not really useful at all, no matter what the situation is?
Possibly.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Possibly Mythic Imperator for picking up ads. If they happen to go loose, it might be the difference between able hitting one or not. The only other fight I used that was 3 tanking Blast Furnace again, where you need to tank the shield guards far enough so that they don't put their shield on the ads, but you can still pick them up without having to move about, as that was the key for the fight, not having to move about. Because if you move about with the new way the mobs move, they'll just run straight behind you and gib you. So you want to stand still as much as you can. So for that, it's good.
I moved this to this part of the show. I wanted to know if Ryan wanted to bring up mob movement.
Oh. Well, I mean, so for those who don't tank out there, and I'm sure that most of our live viewers right now are, tanking affiliates, so to speak. But I would like to talk about this just very briefly, about the changes from all of WoW's history to today when it comes to the movement of NPCs, bosses, groups of ads, etc. And how absolutely aggravating it has been learning how to position bosses in this expansion, again, compared to previous expansions. E-Man, I would love to know your opinion. Have you ran into any serious frustrations? Have you had it at any point in time, were you ready to rip your hair out learning how to position a wad, or are you simply an amazing tank and you really couldn't care less?
I mean, it was terrible the first time I did Heroic Dungeons, Shadow Moon Burial Ground. I forget the last name of the boss there, but he just runs all over the place, like front and back of you. I mean, it's just a mess. I think you get used to it, right? I think I'm to the point where it's not a huge deal anymore.
Right.
It was a huge shift at the beginning of the expansion.
Absolutely. I know for most of BRF, I really didn't have a problem. One of the things that springs to mind, however, is, again, Hans and Franz is a warrior charging in. I don't know which one it is, but the one I charge into the one on the left, and without fail, every time he will run around me and then back to me because of the way that charge works and how it interacts with and whatnot. Have you guys ever experienced that before?
Yeah, I don't charge Hans and Franz for that exact same reason.
Yes.
He walks like behind you, and it's like a dance that he does with you.
Yeah, it's so aggravating. Eddie, have you ran into any frustrations due to the positioning of mobs and WoD?
Yes, I hate it. That one in that instance that you're talking about, E-Man, that was dreadful. I think that's Ner'zhul or something
Yeah,
like
Ner'zhul, yep.
Yeah, when you're trying to position a smash that's got like a 20-degree radius and he just thinks it's go time and runs behind you, it's pretty annoying. Blackhand, I would say, has been the most frustrating and the one that's killed me due to positioning on this. Having to position him when you've got an impale going either side of you, you've got about a 10-degree window to move, then a bomb comes on top of you and you need to reposition the boss. Now, running one side of the impale, if you get it wrong, the boss will just keep going onwards, and then the impale will hit you and you will die. On Mythic, if you get impaled, you're dead. And yeah, I found that incredibly annoying and frustrating. There's a boss on PTR at the moment, the one that fires the fireballs out, which is also pretty annoying in terms of positioning, but I think that's just because its hitbox is tiny.
Tyrant Velhari, I think you're...
Yeah, that's the one. The hitbox is tiny and she just scoots around the place.
She's not a big model, too. She's like tiny.
She's on roller skates, she just scoots about, so... Yeah.
Now, for chat room that doesn't understand what this is, when the server upgrades came in Warlords of Draenor, which are overall amazing for DPS and healing, what happens is, before Warlords, the server system used to take and packet and clump up all of your signals in like a 300 to 400 millisecond like box, like a little packet, and throw it to the server, and then throw all the responses back. Now, the servers actually take individual inputs on like a 30 to 40 millisecond, really fast back and forth. But they didn't add any buffer for like how fast mobs react to you now. They react the same speed that you react to them, more or less. So that's why it causes them to like, you can't tank push anymore. That's dead. Tank pushing was used to be a really good positioning thing because the mob would never want to be inside of your model. They would have to like push back from you. That's gone. And now we have to deal with the fact that when you ever make an adjustment without like making a sweeping like crescent motion to like keep the boss positioned in one spot and then just rotate around him, it's like, oh, gee, mini Christmas. Is there some way that we could like, has there been any comments or does anyone in chat know if they've talked about this? I know they've commented before and said that nothing has changed, which is not true, obviously. So there needs to be something like a built-in buffer on PvE mob reaction time, so that they don't hit you in the butt as a tank, which is the worst thing because you can't dodge or parry from the back, and that happens a lot on boss pulls, like what Ryan just talked about. So,
I mean, as we had the discussion the other day, just a weight 300 on the mob movement script would work.
Right.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and
Make it a lot easier.
Bosses and mobs that are huge, like Gruul, not a big deal moving him, but smaller ones that are more like human-sized, and what you talk about with Eddie, with Tyrant Valhari, she doesn't have a huge model. She's like a slightly larger female Draenor, or it's a problem when they're that small, because then they react to your hitbox. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Susan saying last official response was no plans to change mob movement or something of the sort. Yeah, it's honestly really unhealthy for the tanking community, I can imagine, because Thogar, positioning him on one track between the two fire bombs, and he puts on his dancing shoes and tap dances around you. When you back up once and he's behind you, and the melee have to not DPS, so you can't run through him, and it's awful. It's really, really frustrating. I don't know why, but I have no idea if it's gonna ever change. But gentlemen,
hopefully,
Ryan.
Well, I was just saying, all those frustrations are absolutely true, but it is interesting how, having tanked in WoD for about half a year now, you kind of just, again, I can only speak for myself, but, tanking, 17 bosses now, like, I kind of got used to it.
Sure.
But I miss the old movement style. I do. Because, like you said, Eddie, I mean, the impales and on the Mythic Blackhand, it sucks. Especially, I only tank him in phase 1 as a monk. And I have to tiptoe around the bombs to ensure that he doesn't move, and then he repositions himself, and I get impaled. You already said this, and it sucks, but you just get used to it. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna throw it back to the guests real quick for some closing statements, some soapbox, if you will, maybe some tips and tricks, and some lesser-known Prot Warrior things, or some words of wisdom, or reroll guard button. I don't know what you guys want to talk about. I'll throw it over to you first, E-Man. What you got for the community?
I don't really have any extra shoutouts. I said don't reroll monk is about it, because I'm probably gonna have to do that next year. So everybody else needs to stay.
Yeah, you think you're not gonna be able to stay Prot Warrior?
I mean, it's just a guild decision, right? It's not. At some level, you don't get to make that decision for yourself. Of course. I will most likely be playing monk next year, but I think warriors are strong, so it's not a reason to reroll.
Right. All right, Eddie.
I would have said stay strong. I think warriors on the up again. For the next tier, I'd have said that warrior and monk is going to be a really strong combo for tanking at least the much further end bosses. And what will make the difference for a kill will be having that utility that warrior and monk have. Movement. So I would have said stick with it, because after the balance pass, you never know, it could be in a very strong place. Obviously, just stick around on the forums, be active in the community, and just enjoy the class.
Right. Yeah, because I the only tank I've ever had, because I have a Rep Pally, and I've played Prot Pally, and I'm like, But the only tank I actually have fun on has been a Prot Warrior. I felt like I've had fun on it compared to other classes. So I do wonder, and your comments about movement and mobility are really important for Tier 18. If you can actually go Monk, Prot Warrior, probably pretty strong. Yeah. Of course, if you can dance as good as the tank boss dances with you, that's fine too. So, Ryan, I'll give you some time too. What you got, buddy? Anything?
Well, speaking very seriously here, I think one thing that people need to hear every so often is the fact that tanking, as frustrating as it may be, as much responsibility as it may be for progression guilds and whatnot, it is, in my opinion, one of the most rewarding roles in any MMO you can possibly play. I've been tanking for about 10 years, and I'm just about to step into Tier 18 as a DPS, and it's terrifying and exciting and exhilarating, but I would also be lying if I said I'm not going to miss that title of, oh, that's the guy that tanks for Static or for whatever guild he may be in.
Right.
So I would like to do my best to encourage anyone out there who may eventually ever hear this message. If you've ever had the desire to tank, if you're currently tanking and find yourself struggling, either dive in or keep at it. Because quite frankly, you're not going to improve and you're not going to enjoy the playstyle of a tank until you get in there, you make the mistakes, you learn the ins and outs of tanking, and you simply improve because of those issues. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And I promise you guys, if you have the mentality of a tank, you will be an incredible accessory to any raid team. You are
course.
invaluable to progression teams or even casual raid teams as a tank. And if you're particularly good at tanking. So don't be intimidated by it.
Right.
Don't be scared by it. Don't be afraid to make those mistakes, because I promise you, every other person is making a mistake when it comes to their role too. Yours may just be a little bit more apparent because of the role you play. So get in there, get your hands dirty, and become the next big tank. Become the next Eddy and the next E-Man, guys. Get out there. Take care of business.
Right. Something like that. That would be really good. And of course, we always caveat the show by we break down and talk and discuss with these top players what their mindsets are. But sometimes you have to just take all and just kind of amalgamate that into, you know, their thoughts and opinions to help you learn to grow better. People always ask me on the live stream, like, is this class bad next patch? What should I play instead of? And I'm like, if you're not in a top 10 guild, you can play whatever you want.
Yep.
If you're not running 7 split clears to make sure that one certain class that you're playing is like the best, it doesn't even matter, really. I think the game teeters in balance to get a little better after the top 10, but that leading edge of the world is going to be where those kind of opinions matter. But if you like playing the class, play the class. Especially if it has the guard button.
I know we have to wrap up the show, so I'll be very brief. And I think there's absolutely something to say, and I'm sure we've all heard this before too, that you are going to play at a higher skill level and a higher skill level, whatever. If you play a class that you thoroughly enjoy versus playing that flavor of the month versus being pushed into a class that you're not going to excel at.
Sure.
As an example, I prefer to play my warrior, and I think I'm a pretty good warrior, but monks made more sense for me in my guild, so I picked up my monk and I enjoyed it and I'm good at it, but you know, I'm just a little bit better at my warrior and I enjoy it just a little bit more. So like Bay said, unless you're in a very high-end progression guild, then play what you enjoy, learn it, enjoy it even more so, and just rock and roll with it, man. And also, as chat said, please communicate to your healers, call for cooldowns. So many things don't call for cooldowns. Call for cooldowns, call for cooldowns, call for cooldowns. They're there to be used. It's better to use a cooldown at the wrong time than to not use it at all and just let it go unused. That's all I'm saying. I'm done.
And don't just say cooldown me now, please, because then you'll get 7.
For real.
Call someone else out. Exactly. That's probably the hardest thing as tanking is calling out a specific one at a certain time.
Takes some getting used to.
It does take some getting used to. But this button doesn't. I'm hitting it again for the first time in 2 weeks. There it is. There it is. Thank you all for tuning in for episode number 81 of Final Boss TV about Protection Warriors. Of course, if you have questions for our guests, we'll be back for an after show and a little break. And if you've missed the earlier part of the show, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube right now, hello! You can go to the after show. The button's been up here right now, too. You can go to the after show. But around the table real quick. For his first time on Final Boss TV, I think he did a pretty damn good job talking about the DPS side of Protection Warriors. There's E-Man. You can go follow him over at summitguild.com for all of his... Are you still going to focus on DPS in Tier 18? Or you might not go... No?
I just don't think it's very viable. I think you're going to have to play more defensively in Tier 18, at least for the start of it. We'll see once the progression race is over. But
right. We'll have to see where you do. But, sir, thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure. Very good. Thank you. And we also had Eddy back for the Mists of Pandaria side of things. You can go follow him at Ascendance-guild.eu. You guys going for world first, Eddy?
Well, in theory, yeah. Why not? Why not?
I mean, you told me you're doing 13 split clears, right?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
I mean, the percentage to get all the 4 sets is really low, you told me. So, I mean, 17 split clears at minimum, right?
At minimum, yeah. You gotta be serious, yeah.
Right. So you have, like, how many Prot Warriors do you have ready to go?
Oh, at least 5.
At least 5. Perfect. Very good. Very, very, very good. Thank you for being on the show again, sir. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me again. It was fantastic. Thanks.
And guest co-hosting this time, we had the Mr. Brutall Static. You can follow him on twitch.tv at Brutal Static. It's super difficult to find this man on the internet, I'm sure.
Very difficult. Very difficult. Absolutely. No, thank you for having me on, Baze. It really is always a pleasure to be here, be able to hang out with you and your guests. And I think, again, I just need to turn it right back around to E-Man and Eddy. Like, you guys are incredibly talented players. Community is better for having you involved with it, and you're interesting to listen to as well. And Eddy, you're easy on the eyes, so can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with these two gentlemen. They know what they're talking about, so dig in and love it. No, but thank you for letting me get back, coming back to the show. Man. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, man. And of course, Everything you need to know about Final Boss TV is on FinalBoss.tv. Next week, due to some IRL MMO scheduling issues, I was going to do Disc and Holy Priest, but we cannot, so it's most likely, pretty damn sure, we're doing Elemental Shaman next week. And then it'll be Disc and Holy Priests, and then it'll be another ranged DPS episode right after that one. So stay tuned on the Twitter and the Facebook to find out who the guests are going to be. If you have questions for Elemental Shaman or Discipline and Holy Priests, you can send them in right now to the Ask a Boss button below the stream. And again, stick around for the after show. We'll be back in a little bit of a break to take just live questions from chat for you guys and from Twitter. But until next week, guys, everyone behind the scenes of Final Boss, thank you so much for watching. Trust in your seal of tempered fate before it becomes the time-warped, weird, whatever the hell it is in Tier 18. And until next week, everybody, bye-bye! Bye-bye! Oh, it's the wrong button! Oh my god! There we go, that button! This new building live thing, I'm failing, I'm sorry.